Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for our Tuesday Treasure. My name is Nicole Carpenter. I am the Programs Director and Education Director here at the Westport Museum for History and Culture. This is our Tuesday Treasure program where I go through some of our lesser seen objects in our collection, just as a way to highlight them for all of you to see. As always, we offer this program for free. We do always appreciate your support, and we thank you for your continued support. We do have a suggested your support, and we thank you for your continued support. We do have a suggested donation of $5 for programs such as this, but we do ask that you support the museum however you can during this difficult time. If you have enjoyed our programs in the past and you'd like to be notified of our programs in the future, we do encourage you to follow and like us on all of our social media platforms. On Facebook and Twitter, you can follow us at Westport History, and on Instagram at Westport History Museum. If at any time during our program you have any questions, an anecdote, or just a comment that you'd like to share, please enter it in the comment box, and I will get to as many of those as I can at the end of our presentation. So tonight we are discussing Independence Day. Obviously, the holiday is going to be on Friday, and we do hope that you all celebrate. Before I hop into our objects tonight, I thought I would give you a little bit of history on the holiday itself. Of course, we all know that the American Revolution began before 1776. There was a lot of unrest in the colonies prior to that. We all know the phrase taxation without representation, and that was heard throughout the 13 colonies as they were forced to pay taxes to England, King George III, with no representation in the British Parliament. And we, of course, know that soldiers were sent to the colonies to put down this rebellion and to keep the colonists hopefully in line, which did not happen. On June 11th of 1776, the colony's Second Continental Congress voted to form, or they did form, in Philadelphia, and they formed a committee. This committee consisted of people such as Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, but also included people, two other men, Roger Sherman and Robert R. Livingston. And this committee was put together for the specific task of drafting a document to sever ties with Great Britain. That was their intent. Thomas Jefferson, as we all know very well from our history books, drafted the Declaration of Independence. But this draft and the final document are not the same. There are 86 changes that are made to Jefferson's draft before it is officially adopted by the Continental Congress on July 4th of 1776. The following day, copies of the Declaration of Independence were distributed, and we know on July 6th that the Pennsylvania Evening Post became the first newspaper to print the Declaration of Independence. On the 8th, 2 days after, some of the first public readings of the Declaration are held. We know in Philadelphia's Independence Square, it is actually read to the ringing of bells and band music. Fast forward a year on July 4th of 1777, and Philadelphia also marked Independence Day by adjourning Congress and celebrating with bonfires, bells, and fireworks, probably one of the first official anniversaries and celebrations of the Declaration of Independence. Eventually, over the years, we know that this spread to other towns, both large and small, and they marked it in a variety of ways: orations, picnics, contests, military displays, and, of course, with fireworks. And this tradition actually became more common after the War of 1812 with Great Britain. It just solidified this idea of independence from the UK, or didn't exist as the UK then, but from independent powers. In June of 1826, for the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson was invited to come to Washington, D.C., but he actually had to decline because he was in very, very bad health. It was actually the last letter that he ever wrote. And I wanted to read just a piece of it because it really is a wonderful message. May it be to the world that I believe it will be, the signal of arousing men to burst the chains and to assume the blessings and security of self-government, that from which we have substituted restores the free right to the unbounded exercise of reason and freedom of opinion. All eyes are opened or opening to the rights of man. For ourselves, let the annual return of this day forever refresh our recollections of these rights and an undiminished devotion to them. On June 28th of 1870, Congress passed a law making July 4th, Independence Day, a federal holiday. And in 1938, Congress reaffirmed that it was a paid holiday for all federal employees. And again, today, communities across the nation celebrate July 4th. This year will be admittedly a bit different than it usually is, but it has become this symbol of national pride. So jumping into the objects that I'd like to show you all this evening. The first is not the original. It is a scan just so that I can handle it a little bit more safely. This is a document from 1781. And let me hold it up here so you can see it a bit better. So this document is a payment voucher. A man named Cuff purchased his freedom from William Willard in Middletown in 1776. Cuff chose the surname of Liberty to show his status as a freeman. Cuff Liberty had been enslaved prior to 1776. But as the Revolution began, he decided that he needed to do his part. And in 1778, he enlisted in the 6th Connecticut Regiment of the Continental Army. Now, this payment voucher, if you can see up at the top, it is actually dated 1781, and this is a voucher for back pay. Cuff was owed actually you can see it on this line here. It might be a little hard to read, but he was owed 35 pounds, 6 shillings, and 8 pence. And he was being paid by Hartford, as you can see up on the top, for his service from the year 1780. So this was back pay that was due to him. And the reason that we wanted to show this item tonight is not that it was issued on July 4th or that he took part in any demonstrations or battles or conflicts on the 4th, but as a reminder to everyone that many African American men decided to join the Continental Army during the Revolution. Many hoped that this new republic, advocating for liberty for all, would include them if they did their part, as they would say. They hoped that by joining their cause, they would be included in all of these wonderful things that the Declaration of Independence claimed for its citizens. We also know that many African men, as they were either African or maybe first or second generation African Americans, these black men, many of them also supported the British, who also promised freedom in exchange for service. And this is a wonderful reminder, this document, of the sacrifices that all of Americans, especially black Americans, that have done to secure our liberty and our freedom that we celebrate on this holiday. So that is our first item. And you can see just down here at the bottom of the document the name Cuff Liberty, which is really a lovely reminder on this day to celebrate our own liberty. The next item that I wanted to show you actually ties in with the piece just behind me. So I know that it's a bit further away. It is very heavy, so I'm not going to bring it closer to you, but I can bring all of you a bit closer to it. So this piece here, let me block the light a little bit. This piece here is a lithograph of Compo House. You can see the name down there on the bottom. And this is the residence of Richard Henry Winslow. Some of you who were with us last week might recognize that name. This is the property that would become the Westport Sanitarium in 1891. But Compo House was a family home in the 1850s. And this home is the site of a fabulous celebration in the year 1856. Let me turn you back just a little bit. There we are. We know of a really, really lovely time that happened on July 4th. Let me put on my gloves as well, because of another object that we hold in the museum's collection. Now, this grand house would have had many visitors, and when you came to visit this house, they would have signed in to the Register of Visitors at the Compo House. So this document is very, very old. It is also in not bad condition, but a little bit of delicate condition. So I actually have an entry that I'd like to read to you rather than showing you, and it describes a really lovely celebration. It was described by James S. Sanford. He signs the entry for July 4th of 1856. And this is how he describes the celebration at Compo House. This is the 80th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, was celebrated at Compo House in a manner worthy of mention. The day proved very pleasant. The national flag was flying from the most conspicuous part of the green, as from morning until the close of the day. After ample justice had been done to the profusion of delicacies laid before us, appropriate sentiments were offered and received in the old spirit of '76. Soon after sunset, the friends and neighbors began to assemble at the mansion, and the grounds and in the streets adjacent, to witness the display of fireworks and the illumination with which the day was to be closed. Before the hour for firing the signal rocket had arrived, hundreds of persons had congregated. The mansion and its broad piazzas were thronged with guests. At 9, our noble host fired the signal rocket, and a constant succession of rockets, lights, and fires of various kinds riveted the attention of the vast crowd for an hour and a half. One piece, the Star of the Warrior, terminating in brilliant fires forming the word Compo, was the chief hors d'oeuvre of the exhibition and was greeted with most hearty cheers. The illumination was not the last attractive feature in this celebration. The house, the drive, the grounds, the graperies, stables, and coach houses were all lighted up with gas manufactured on the premises and attracted much attention. The drive was very brilliantly lighted and was particularly beautiful, standing out as a beacon visible to the country for several miles about. From this description, we can tell that there was a really spectacular fireworks display, but this illumination that Sanford mentions is the new lights. So Compo House was actually installed with gas lights in 1855, and these lights would have been extremely bright. And when he says that it stands out as a beacon, we have to remember that in the 1850s, Westport had been clear-cut for most of the country, and Compo House, which sits at the corner of Post Road and Compo Road here in the back, it's just at the corner. This would have been on an elevated point, and it would have actually been visible, lit like this at nighttime in the evening on the July 4th. It would have been, as he mentions, a very, very visible sight. And I think that he ends this description with a really lovely little thought that I think we can all appreciate a little bit this year. And he ends his entry, May the day be distant when similar commemorations of this event day shall cease. And unfortunately, this year we won't be able to celebrate with the usual commemorations, as he says. There will be no town-wide fireworks display. But we do hope, everyone here at the museum does hope that you celebrate in your own way at home. We do ask that you not use fireworks. They are illegal. Our firefighters appreciate that. But maybe take a hint from the Compo House from 1856 and decorate and have a lovely display at your own home and celebrate this day of pride. The last two items that I wanted to show you are a bit further in time, so these are a bit closer to us. These two items were donated to the museum by Mary Elizabeth Bullockheitz, and her maiden name was Quinn. She donated these items from her family, and the first item here is this little flag. This is a 38-star American flag. That means that the flag is somewhere between 1877 and 1890. But this flag is notable for its inscription. So you can, I hope it's not too shiny, just here on this white line, if I hold it here, you can see the date of July 4th, 1918, and on the end it says, "To my sweetie." And this flag was mailed back to the United States from a it was mailed by a Mr. William Thomas Quinn to his sweetie Mary Beeling. William had enlisted in World War I on October 16th of 1917 when his unit was mustered in Fairfield. When he entered the First World War, he was 24 years old, and he described himself as 5'11" with dark brown hair, blue eyes, and a lightly ruddy complexion. And William sent this flag back to this young lady. This is to Mary Beeling, and we have a lovely photograph of her that she sent to William. So this is who received the flag. And if you join us next week on the 7th, we will be going over items related to World War I, and William Quinn is going to feature in that discussion, so you can hear a little bit more about him and learn the ending of his story, find out his fate. So those are the last objects that I have for you this evening, just a quick special edition of our July 4th items. I hope that you found them very interesting, and I do hope that you will join us next week. I'm going to go through now any of the questions and comments that we have. We have someone watching from, and I apologize if I say this wrong, Penacook, New Hampshire. Welcome. Good evening, everyone. We do have a comment here from Sarah. And she says, "I can only imagine the awe that attendees of the fireworks display at the Compo House must have felt in 1856. Spelling Compo in the sky was an impressive feat for the time." That's very true. We have some really magnificent firework displays now. I know that some will be televised, which I'm excited about, and some of them are just absolutely amazing. But the idea of being able to spell out a word in the sky for a local fireworks display in 1856, so this is just prior to the Civil War, is really fantastic. Susan also agrees. She says that it sounds like the celebration was amazing. I agree. I would love to have seen photographs of it or anything like that, but they just weren't common in the 1850s. And we do have We do have, Susan also says, fond memories of fireworks at Compo, and I'm sure that the fireworks at Compo would have at least been a good rival to the fireworks that were happening at the Compo House. Again, it's hard to argue with that description of that, spelling out the words and everything in the sky. It's really lovely. Zoo says, ooh, cliffhanger. Yes, you will have to tune in next week to find out the rest of William's story. He does have a very interesting story, so please do tune in next week for the conclusion of the Quins. And our last comment here is, was the spirit of 76 at the Compo Feast about drinking beer, maybe? Possibly. It may have, it's up for interpretation. It could have been beer. It could have also been cider. Cider is something very, very common in the colonies. It's also, apples are a huge export from Westport, so lots and lots of apples in the community. It also could be interpreted to mean simply celebrating the time. So you think of embodying the spirit. So I'm not sure if it means more of a celebration, or if it really literally means a libation that they're taking in. So that's a little up in the air. I'd be interested to know what it is. They were just talking about delicacies and things like that, so there is some evidence that it might mean that they're actually partaking of some spirits. But it's a curious entry. If you did not get a chance to enter your question, or you weren't able to join us live, you can always add your question in later. I and my staff are always checking these videos to see if there are any new comments or questions, and we will try and answer that if you have another. But those are all of the questions and comments that I have for this evening. Thank you so much for joining me. I do hope that you have a happy 4th of July. I know that there are some really wonderful televised events, but I do hope that you will celebrate at home in your own way. Thank you again, and have a great evening.